I'm Sean Crawford, host of Varsity House Podcast, and we're back here at LSU with my favorite guy, Coach Kelly. The weather is beautiful. Down in November, you don't really, get this weather up where we're from in the Midwest. But again, I appreciate your time and I appreciate you coming on again.
Yeah, good to be back. Anytime you get a second offer to be on the Varsity House, you must be doing something right.
Yeah, you're the first reappearance. So obviously your episode did really well. The fan base, loved it, and I gained some, LSU Tiger fan base, and so I feel like I had to come down, especially with the rest of the season ahead and Alabama ahead, and then also just the season that you've had so far. So I feel like it was perfect timing to come back and have a conversation. But obviously in recent news, the donation to the sports medicine program. Kind of talk about that and just how important that is to the players.
Yeah, so for me, it's always been about how do you create an environment for, the best, human performance or, high performance training for your players. And, it was nutrition. Certainly, we've got one of the best on-campus dining opportunities for our players, but our training room was inadequate. And so having a great training staff is one thing, but they have to have the facilities, and we didn't have them here. So the donation was really about getting that facility built. We're going to break ground at the end of the season, and we'll have one of the best athletic training facilities in the country for our players.
Mm-hmm. Especially for me, they probably don't, LSU fan base probably don't know my history, but with the time I spent in the sports medicine room,
Everybody knew you.
Yeah.
You had your own training table.
I'm sure the players are going to love it, and also the trainers are going to love it as well. But 8 games into this season so far, 3/4 of the way through, is this what you expected? From the transition?
Sean, I've never, and you know me, outcomes are not what I'm really about in terms of wins and losses. It's about getting the process and getting the guys into what we consider the kind of standards that they need to have every day. I think we're moving along in that direction where they look. I know the system, like the system in the process. They didn't.
Right.
So I'm really proud of what they've done and accomplished to this point to do the little things the right way. And so I just think that we're right in the middle of that process, and I didn't know how many games we'd win or lose at this point. I just like the fact that they've been committed to the process, and I'm proud of them.
That's interesting because, you talk about the process, and as a player, the process is bull.
Yeah, you don't think
but
about
it. Right? But when you leave, and I say this because I was talking to a player who transferred from Notre Dame, and he's at a different program now, and he was mentioning how things were ran at Notre Dame to how it's ran where he is now, and it's completely different to where the commitment is different, the accountability is different, it's not there. And just when he's talking about just going into the game, it's you had confidence in that you were going to win the game. No matter who we played, we had confidence in the coaches, we had confidence in the game plan, but also in ourselves. And so hearing him speak about that kind of, spoke volume to me because while we're in it, it's just oh, this is something else we got to do. This is another meeting we got to go to or things like that. But being able to hear it from him is just okay, this actually makes sense. But then also to see you implement that year one and have the success, I guess the process is, a good one.
Yeah, and so I think you're right. You want to build it so you don't know it's happening, but when you come in the doors, there's a consistency. So every day when you came to the Goog, you knew what to expect. Right. There weren't a lot of curveballs. You didn't necessarily like everything, but you knew what to expect every single day. And that's what we're building here, that it's a consistent approach. Every single day they know what they're going to get, and that builds habits, and that builds a way to think about what they're doing every day. And that's essentially, in a nutshell, that's our process.
And I think they probably won't realize it now, but after they leave here, one of the biggest things I saw Baylor's recently, and I was the biggest transition for me was structure.
Yep.
And like you mentioned, when you come into the building, it's consistency and everything, but real world, some things are consistent, but then you got to work on being accountable. You got to be smart. You got to have good habits and things like that, and that carries over into the real world. So I think outside of football, and that's also why guys, I think we do well in the NFL.
Yep.
when your players leave, they do well in the NFL because they have that foundation.
No doubt. Transferable habits, right? So you can take those with you. Just in what you're doing. You're here on time. You know, you said, hey, I'm going to be here. You show up, you know, because you have those transferable, you know, skills that were part of what you did on a day-to-day basis. And so, you know, my job is to get those skills built into you so when you leave the program, you can apply them to your everyday life, whether you're, you know, a successful businessman, husband, father, whatever you do, you're going to have those skills.
Now, talking about consistency a little bit, obviously you ran out the Notre Dame tunnel for so many years and you kind of knew what to expect, but your first game here, you know, running out, obviously the first game was at in New Orleans, but your first game like at Tiger Stadium, was there anything that like bench control didn't prepare you for?
No, I think, you know, when you're at a place like Notre Dame, you get the enormity of it, and certainly at LSU you have that as well. So I think I was well prepared for it. There's little nuances that are different, you know, that you don't have here that you had at Notre Dame. Right. But you know, it's loud. There's a raucous environment. There's just little differences, but the college game day is amazing. So, you know, to me, what I've learned to just take it in and enjoy it and make sure that the guys are well prepared. So when it's Saturday, let them go play.
Mm-hmm. Now the SEC, obviously that's different. Is it as challenging or as, you know, hard as a lot of the media or people say?
You know, I think the skill level in a lot of areas, there's similarities. I think where there's a bit of a difference is on probably the defensive line. Okay. Each and every week you're being challenged by incredible pass rushers, every team you play. Mm-hmm. And then on the perimeter, the wide receivers, each and every week, you're going up against big-time playmakers. So I think there's a little bit of a difference there, but, you know, we played great teams, right? USC and Clemson, you know, really good, you know, Big Ten teams. So, again, there's a little bit of a difference. I think what you see here is that week in and week out, we had 4 straight SEC opponents. That's pretty tough going against SEC week in and week out. Mm-hmm.
And that kind of brings me to, you know, you guys have some freshmen standouts on the offensive line and then also defensive line, like you just mentioned. Will Campbell and then Harold Perkins. So kind of just, you know, talk about what they've meant to the program and just their, you know, adaptation to their freshman year.
Well, it's similar to, you know, when we were together, you know, you would see freshmen come up, right? And you knew if they were ready, if they could handle it mentally, right? Physically, a lot of these guys came in and they had physical ability, but, you know, they get a ball thrown over their head and they, you know, you'd lose them for 10 plays. Or they'd miss a tackle or they drop a ball, you wouldn't see them for 2 or 3 plays. These guys can handle it mentally. Harold Perkins, you can send him out there and he can forget the next play. He can focus and then refocus on the next play. He has all the skills, obviously, but it's the mental ability for him to go out and compete. Same thing with a Will Campbell, Emory Jones, who's another freshman that's starting at right tackle. So we've got 2 true freshmen starting at right and left tackle, and Harold Perkins. Mason Taylor is another true freshman starting at tight end. You know, that's 4 true freshmen playing in the SEC. Right. You have to have a mental capacity to handle that as well.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of just, you know, get into the season to where, obviously the season's been great. I've been following. This is the first time, like, I usually watch the big games of like LSU, but now I'm like, I gotta. It's been perfect so far because Notre Dame and LSU haven't really played at the same time. So I've been able to watch both, and I also love like the CBS guys, the SEC guys. But I watched we're talking about the Tennessee game for a bit. Obviously a huge game, and you know things started off rocky from the start. No doubt. So kind of just, you know, talk about like things that you might have learned from that game, because that was probably, or it was like the big, you know, our first loss in the stadium, you know, in front of your fan base. So kind of just talk about that game and what you've learned from it.
I think our guys learned about, you know, preparation has to be so much more intentional, and you know, it's not just, hey, let's check the box on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday preparation. Let's be more intentional, more purposeful in our preparation, because if you're sloppy at all against really good teams, you're going to get exposed. And as you mentioned, our start is we gave them 10 points before the 12-minute mark. So you start spotting teams because of your own mistakes. You're going to get beat, and then it just kind of got away from us. So I think we went back and we looked at, all right, how did we prepare ourselves? And I thought our guys went back and prepared differently, much more intentional. They were much more focused in practice. And we saw that carry over to the Florida game the next week where they played so much better.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that happened twice. Obviously, after the Florida State game, that was a roller coaster in itself. For a fan, a fun one to watch. And then also they responded very well the next week. And then also the Tennessee that you just mentioned, they responded well against Florida. Does that go into like the process and everything that you talk about?
See, I think the first game was more about not having the continuity with players playing together. And you know this as a safety. We had some guys back there that didn't communicate with each other ever before. We had some transfers. So we had some missed coverage assignments. We had some things that were kind of the newness of playing together. When we kind of got that figured out in the second half, we played really well, but it was just a little too late and we made a silly mistake on an extra point, or, maybe things are different. I think the rest of the season now, it's been about them understanding preparation and how to prepare the right way. And then when you get to the game, flipping that preparation to performance. And I think they're getting better at it each and every week, and I think we've seen that the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. And now you guys have been rolling, the past 2 weeks, 45 points in each game. I think Jaden is playing very well at quarterback. Do you think the bye week, might have, slowed the momentum down a little bit?
I think you can look at it one of two ways. One, you want to keep playing and keep going. Or two, let's use this as kind of an active recovery and a reset, mentally and physically. They know where they're at, and they know what they need to do to be really good. Right. I think it's a good way to kind of step back a little bit and say, okay, we got 1 month left in the season. Here's what we need to do to really be the best version of ourselves. So, I think it's all about the way you think about it. Right. They could use a little time, and they have, but they're going to reset the right way, and I think we'll come back Monday and be ready to go.
Mm-hmm. And now, when we played in the conference, ACC for the COVID year, we played in it for 1 year, and my thoughts on it or my reactions was like whenever we watched film, it was a little easier because it was repetitive. We got to see the same teams. We got to watch the same type of or formations and things like that. And so obviously this is your first time in a conference again. How's that approach been for you? And has it been any different, or has it even helped you as a coach? And
I think it's better, for me, because you become more familiar with the teams. You get to see a consistency with them. As you remember at Notre Dame, each and every week you'd have a new team.
We'd throw away film.
Yeah, you wouldn't be like, I don't even know. Let's not watch that. And of course, we had the academies too.
Exactly right.
Which is even more difficult because then you have that the late in the season. You're like, all right, that's a whole different week of preparation. But no, I think being in a conference, you get a lot more familiar with the teams and the players that are here. They've already played these teams. Okay. So they know what they're about, and they know what the matchups are, and they have a history with them. And so this team played at Alabama last year, lost 20-14, and had a great chance to beat them. So, it's not like we have to talk them into beating Alabama. They believe that they can. So now it's about executing and playing well. So I think that helps when you're in a conference.
Mm-hmm. That gets me into the atmospheres too, because we've played in I want to say a couple SEC atmospheres, and one of my favorite ones that we played in was Georgia. No doubt. And for coming from Notre Dame, it was it was surprising. It was eye-shocking. And so now even, the atmospheres you play in, I'm sure LSU's crazy. And then also the Florida one, which was very exciting. Obviously, there was a trending video of you singing Won't
Tom
Back.
Petty.
Yeah, Won't Back Down. And so I thought that was amazing. But even just that atmosphere, kind of, talk about that and just, the difference in, wherever you go is going to be a show.
Well, if you remember when we played at Virginia Tech, they play that Enter Sandman song. And we kept playing it all week because we wanted our guys to be ready to hear that. And when they played it, it became our song. Well, I wanted to do the same thing with the Tom Petty song because they were going to play it in the fourth quarter. So we kept playing it. I said, by the way, when we get to the fourth quarter, if we're playing really well, we should start singing the song too, because it's not going to be that loud in the stadium. So it was much more mental than it was anything else, is that let's get familiar with this because you're going to hear it, and let's do something about it. So it had a similar effect of it. I wasn't trying to show anybody up. It was more about our team kind of taking over the environment more so than letting them take it from us. And so that was, I thought it worked well, and our guys were comfortable, and it didn't intimidate them.
Mm-hmm. And now, obviously, we're approaching November, and we all know that's where great programs are made, And so you obviously started off with Alabama, and so, but the biggest difference I want to say is the weather. Being down here, obviously coming from the Midwest, the weather and being able to practice outside, I'm sure is a huge difference. So kind of just, talk about that. Maybe, obviously we talked about it last time and how it was, going to be beneficial to, you, but also the guys as well. But so kind of just, talk about November, your preparation for November, but also, being able to enjoy it a little bit with the sunshine.
Yeah, Sean, I think November is really about how you train your team beginning in January, right? I mean, so many teams are at this pace of, more work is better. I'm a big believer that you pace your team out through the entire 365 days, so when you get to November, you're not tired. And so, as you know, we keep an eye on that through GPS. We want to make sure that our guys are using their Oura ring so we know what their HRV is, so they're recovering. I think November is a time where if you're smart and you're taking care of your football team and you're practicing right, you can get an edge over your opponent because they're beat down a little bit and they're tired. So we're hoping that we've been really smart and intentional in the way we've trained our team, that not only do we get outside and practice outside in great weather, but that we're ready to peak in November. And I think the really good teams, as you mentioned, begin to play better and better in November because they've taken care of their team throughout the entire year.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of have to ask this question. It's the bye week. You'll have some time off. I'm sure you'll kick your feet up, sip on whatever you like to sip on. But obviously Notre Dame plays this week and they have a big game. But so have you been able to check them out at all this year?
I haven't been able to. I obviously seen that they've had some, they had a nice win last week, but I know they had a couple of tough ones. But look, I love those kids, because I've recruited most of them, and I win with them and I lose with them and feel it. So, I know they are not where they want to be, but they overcome adversity. Those are tough kids, and they'll bounce back. And they got Syracuse this weekend. It looks like they're having a great season. But again, they're built for this. They're built for adversity, and I'm sure they're going to come out on top.
And now, obviously Marcus Freeman's first time being a head coach. Do you have any words, that maybe someone or a mentor may have told you or anything as your first time, but that you may want to share or, shine light to?
I like Marcus. I worked with Marcus. I hired him. I think he's an extremely bright and intelligent coach. Being a first-time head coach is difficult. Being a first-time head coach at Notre Dame is really difficult because there's so many moving pieces. He seems to have learned so much during the season. I think he just continues to rely on the people around him. His instincts are good. Looks like he's got his team playing much better, and rely on his gut instincts because he's pretty smart, and I think he'll get his football team playing well.
And now it's also, for me, it's fun because I get to see Coach Jake on the sideline. I see Dr. Selking on the side. I get to see all the familiar Ryan back there. So I get to see all the familiar faces to where it's now I get to, when you talk about you win and lose with them, I feel like I win and lose with you guys now.
Well, you got a couple of teams that you can, all right, if one team did well, you can turn the TV on and see if the other one did well.
And then I get disappointed on Sunday with the Browns, and so it's some weekends are pretty tough, but you guys have kept it pretty good for me.
You had the Indians there for a while, if you like baseball.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. They were doing well. They were doing
okay too.
But now, Alabama week is here. has the energy, and you mentioned, last year's game, so obviously the confidence in the players is there. The confidence within the building is there. Have you felt the energy around campus and around town yet?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is Alabama, they don't even put the large A on anything around here. It's a small A for Alabama, and, there's obviously a huge sense of this game around town already. People are talking about it, and, you can tell by what the price is for a ticket to get into the stadium. It's going to be exciting, and that's why I came to the SEC. I wanted to be involved in these kinds of games, and it still has to run through Alabama. They're the team to beat, and
right.
So this is exactly why I wanted to take this job and prepare a football team to play Alabama. And the nice part about it is we get to November and the game means something. So.
Right.
That's a good thing.
I remember last time I was here, I wore like a pinkish red shirt, and kind of got some stuff for it. I had no idea that was a rule,
kind of Alabamish. I think they gave you a pass.
They gave me a pass, so it was a first timer, and I think I knew the right person, so they let me in. They let me in the door, and so. Is this your third time playing Nick Saban?
This will be 1, 2, 3. Yes, this will be the third time.
So the previous 2 times one was a national championship, and then one was a playoff game. Mm-hmm. Obviously, not the same magnitude, but obviously it still means the same to the program.
Sure.
A win does. Talk about the approach to it. It's not that same magnitude of a game, but talk about the approach to where this is going to be something that's reoccurring. Regular season. So just kind of touch on like the magnitude of it.
Well, I think whoever has this has a stranglehold on the SEC West. To play for the SEC championship. So the magnitude of the game is pretty large for both teams. Mm-hmm. So they have as much on this game as we do, and I think you go into a game like that where they're on the road, even though they're a big favorite. Where they've got as much in this game as we do. So prepare the way we have, and I think, like I said, our guys have taken kind of this as a reset this week, and they'll put in the time, and then they got to go make some plays against a really good football team.
Mm-hmm. And then also, I think you guys are rolling at the right time. And talk about Jaden Daniels from his development from week 1 to where he is now. I mentioned, 45 points the past 2 games, and receivers are coming along. I like Neighbors. I think he's been balling since the first game as well. Kind of just talk about the development and just the role that you've played just in his development so far this season.
Well, he's got 11 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, and a lot of it is his assertiveness, and I think that comes from just the knowledge of the offense. John, he didn't know it very well. I mean, this was a huge departure from what he was used to doing offensively. They were much more of a direct snap, pro-style offense. Shotgun, no back, progression read. It was a big departure, but that's why he came here. He wanted to learn, this type of offense. So it just took him some time to learn it, and now that he's got a better sense of it, he's off and running.
Mm-hmm. And now on the defensive side of the ball, we mentioned this pre-show, but one of my favorite players is Greg Brooks. Yeah. Transferred in. Yep. So kind of just, talk about his development as well, and like how he's meant to the secondary and also the rest of the defense.
Absolutely. He's first of all, he's ferocious out there. I mean, he plays a lot like you. I mean, he's physical, he's smart. You remember the strip that you had at Michigan State where we get the huge play. He had one against Auburn where he steps in and takes the football from the receiver at the end of the game. He's got a lot of your traits. And look, you can't coach some of that stuff, right? That just comes from just being a smart player. And we have a guy with a high IQ back there who throws himself around, is physical, and we get the kind of play that you're looking for in the back end of your defense with him.
I was talking to Ryan a little bit before this, and we talked about the recruiting season and even in season, because where at Notre Dame, you kind of had to make a trip out of it. You had to go out of your way to maybe go and visit and things like that. But here, there's so much talent just within the state and just the neighboring states as well. Kind of just talk about the recruiting trips and things like that that's been going on in season.
Well, we try to get out on Friday nights because we're so local. So most of the coaches will try, as long as it's close by, we'll get out even when we're at home to see guys play. And the entire staff is out on the road right now because we don't have to go quite as far as you mentioned. We're a little bit further out right now in 23, 24, but again, it's not like it was when we were at Notre Dame where we had to fly all over the country. It's much more regional.
Mm-hmm. And now, so obviously at the end of the season, or not at the end of the season, but you've played in some games and, towards the end of the season. What's been your take on the fan base so far?
Terrific. Really, I think what I like about it the most is it's a fan base that is educated in a sense that they know football. They're going to tell you what they feel like any other fan base, good or bad. Right. But I think they know that we're developing our football team and that this is not a finished product. And so what they want is a team that fights. Mm-hmm. And from day one, this team has fought. Even if they haven't played well, they have fought for 4 quarters. And I think as Louisiana residents, they want to see their football team fight for 4 quarters. Mm-hmm. They want them to win, no doubt. Yeah. But if it fights hard and plays hard for 4 quarters, as it's developing, they're going to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. They love the wins, obviously. Even last week, rushing the field.
Yeah, that was kind of unusual. I didn't expect that to happen. Yeah. But I guess if they're rushing the field, good things are happening for you.
Yeah, I remember the only time that we got to experience the rush the field was the Clemson win.
Yes.
And for us, it was first of all, it was the COVID year, so it was very unexpected. But it was. As a player, I feel like that experience is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Obviously you don't get it often, and I think hopefully you guys could, make it happen again this next week.
I don't want to put any, pressure on anybody to pay, fines, but I guess again, if they're rushing the field, good things are happening.
Yeah, and so also good things are happening for you. I know we saw you got a little bonus.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. I guess. They're paying me back for just doing my job.
Yeah.
But I guess it's one of those things that happens when you have good representation.
Exactly. And so, I think that's all I have for you. Good. I mean, it was a great conversation. I had obviously amazing trip down here is always fun, but I also can't believe last time I came. I mentioned that the only game I wanted to go to, because I knew you guys would be good, was this Alabama game. And so I think we're in a position. I didn't jump on the bandwagon. I was here from the start. So
I think we can make that happen. That's not an issue.
Yeah, I think that'll be good.
You got it,
But I appreciate you coming on again.
Thanks,
and we're in the Tyrann Mathieu Player Lounge. It's amazing. So definitely want to give a shout out to him and everything he's done for the program. And so
thanks, man.
I can't wait to watch you this next weekend and see the process on the field. And so appreciate it again. I'm Sean Crawford, host of Varsity House Podcast, and Coach Kelly, head football coach at LSU. Thank you.
Thank you.